last 5 days or so, we have been conducting this primer shrink test, and these are all the panels from this test. We've done wet film build tests. We've weighed them every day. This has been the 5th day since these have been sprayed. So at day 4, by day 4, all of these primers have stopped losing weight on the scale, which means that they have stopped losing solvent and stopped shrinking. We had a wide variety of mil thickness readings when we read these wet, right after we sprayed them. And we did 3 coats out of the recommended tip size, 3 coats over bare metal on each spray out panel. Then we weighed them wet, then we weighed them the next day, and the next day, and the next day. It has been 4 days of weighing these. So up to 4 days, some of these primers took 4 days to lose all the weight. Some of them took a day, some of them took 2 or 3 days. It's a wide variety of things that are happening here, and we had a wide variety of mil thickness readings when these were wet. So this first panel that I'm going to measure is G2 feather fill. This panel was 7 mils wet, so I'm going to go ahead and recalibrate my mil gauge. So 0 mils. So let's see what this is. 4.59 mils. This is our slick sand panel. This panel was 10 mils, wet film build, 3 coats. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset this and we'll see what this is. 5.44 mils. So this is our rust defender panel. This panel was 11 mils wet, 7.4 mils. So this is our all you need panel. This panel was 9 mils wet, now 5.71 mils. So this is our linear epoxy panel. This panel wet was 22 mils, and now we are at 17.14 mils. So this is our SPI epoxy panel. This panel was 8 mils wet. Now we are at 4.15. So this is our Tamco high build epoxy panel. This panel wet was 16 mils. Now 6.44. This is our KD 3000 panel. This panel was 7 mils wet. Now 3.44 mils. This is our CRE 921 panel. This panel was 9 mils wet. 3.66 mils. What is the adhesion to bare metal like? A lot of these are not necessarily a DTM primer, like the feather fill, the slick sand. They might say that you can go over bare metal, but being a spray poly, they're really not a DTM primer. Even the rust defender is a spray poly and is activated by peroxide, which is no different than putting filler over bare metal. Peroxide is an oxidizer and will cause rust. In my opinion, the only thing that they are thinking makes certain spray polys a DTM primer is they're adding some rust encapsulator properties to it, but they're still activated by peroxide. So it's kind of a horse apiece. You're probably not getting nearly the corrosion protection that you could with an epoxy from any spray poly that you'll ever.
So in terms of wet film build to dry film build, this is what we have. The G2 feather fill was 7 mils wet, ended up being 4.59 mils in the end. So that means that is a 65% solid product. Truly, it is a 65% solids. They may advertise differently, but in a real world scenario, that's what you're going to end up with on your panel in the end. So slick sand went from 10 mils down to 5.44 mils for a 54% solid. Rust defender was 11 mils down to 7.4 for a 67% solid. All you need was 9 mils down to 5.71 mils for a 63% solid. The linear was 22 mils down to 17.14 for a 77% solid. SPI went from 8 mils down to 4.15 for a 51% solid. Tamco went from 16 mils down to 6.44 for a 40% solid. KD 3000, 7 mils down to 3.44 for a 49% solid. and CRE 921 from 9 mils down to 3.66 for a 40% solid. So to recap on the weights and the amount of time it takes for these products to stop shrinking, stop losing weight. Top to bottom, G2 took 3 days to stop losing weight. The Slick Sand took 3 days. Rust Defender took 4 days. All You Need took 3 days. Linear took 1 day. SPI 3 days. Tamco 3 days. KD 3000 3 days. CRE 3 days. So what I've done with these panels is I have taken a screwdriver and just putting a nice gouge into all these panels till I hit bare metal. And then what I've done is I've taken 80 grit on a DA and tried to feather that back out. And what I'm looking for here is certain epoxies have more of an edge on them. Certain primers that I'm testing here, they have more of a rough edge, and some of them have a smoother, more gradual edge, I'll say. Some of these edges you can kind of feel, and some of these you really can't. And what I'm looking for is to see all those sand scratches actually the primer actually embedded into the scratches, like it is on right here. You can see that it's actually bitten down into the 80 grit scratches that we prepped these panels with. And in my opinion, I think all of these are sticking to bare metal very well. I wouldn't say really that one is sticking better than the other. They're all sticking to bare metal very well. So what we're gonna do from here is we're going to spray these down with salt water, and we're gonna set them outside for months. You guys won't know the results of this for quite a while, because neither will I. So we're gonna spray these down with salt water, put them outside in the weather, in the dirt, just let them sit, let them rot, and then we're gonna check for what they call creep. Is obviously the bare metal is gonna get rusty, and we're gonna see how well each one of these primers actually keeps that rust from getting underneath, how well these primers are actually protecting the metal. And this is basically what they do in a salt spray test, but a little different. Obviously I don't have a salt spray machine, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a creep test.